All right. Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and in today's video, I'm bringing you a complete scout rifle tier list for PvP, ranking every single scout rifle, legendary and scout, every scout rifle that's not sunset, that is, for PvP. And the reason is because there was a few weekends ago of trials where we played on Eternity, and everyone was dusting off the scout rifles from the vault and busting them out for Eternity. And I found it very fascinating, very interesting why so many people were suddenly using Jade Rabbit, because we hadn't really seen it used nearly to that level of popularity. Of course, is because it's a much bigger map, but is Jade Rabbit really the best 150 RPM? And a variety of other questions were brought up. So I spent almost the entirety of today testing things. And some of you might be wondering, well, what about the scout rifle buff coming next season? Won't that change this tier list? The buff is specifically to PvE, a 10% buff from Bungie next season. So this won't affect this tier list at all. The only weapon that we've seen being adjusted so far would be the Dead Man's Tale. So the Dead Man's Tale may go up or down based on how well its adjustment is next season from Bungie. But I think it'll probably go up a little bit, but only time will tell. It seems to be an interesting buff. So minus the Dead Man's Tale, everything should be the exact same next season. So if we do get a gigantic Trials map, I think you'll find this information to be very, very helpful. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive right in. First, I'm going to go over 4 points of definition we'll talk about, which is the archetypes we're going over. You've got the 150 archetype, the 180, the 200, and the 260. Those are your 4 archetypes of scout rifles, and I'm going to rank them a little bit. Obviously, there's some outliers. Some scout rifles break their archetype significantly, and due to the perks they have on them or the stats they have, and so some of them might be a lot higher ranking than others. But the 150s, you have the 3-tap, the slowest fire rate. We've got the Jade Rabbits, and there's a few others that are 150s. And then you've got your 180s, which are 4-tap. However, if you do get a damage boosting perk on the 180 RPM, this is like the Tears of Contrition archetype. If you do get a damage boosting perk on them, they can often 3-tap, so that's why you'll see a lot of people enjoying the 180 archetype of scout rifles. Then you've got your 200s, which are your 4-taps, which is like the Mida multi-tool, which was obviously a very much beloved scout rifle in the early days of D2, year 1. Shout out to anyone out there that was playing Trials during that period of time on Eternity. And then you've got the 260s, which are your 5-taps. And I'm going to say that the 260s are probably the weakest archetype because the range at which you use those is getting closer to hand cannon range. And a 5-tap is pretty brutal. And not 140 RPM hand cannon range, but more like 120 RPM or even pulse rifle range. You're going to have to compete against those pulse rifles. They have a lot better time to kill and ease of use. And so the 260s are going to say are the weaker archetype. The 200s are a little bit weaker than the 180s. I think a lot more people like the 180s and play into the 180 style because you get a kill and then the next kill you can get that 3-tap, and that tends to be sort of the most optimal play style, unless of course you're playing on a massive map like Eternity or anything else that's really big. Then you're going to use the 150s. And so with that all kept in mind, let's go ahead and start this ranking, okay? We're going to start off with probably the worst 150 RPM that we can talk about, which is the Pointed Inquiry. Now, even though it's the juicy archetype, the 150s that work really well at range, it's outclassed by so many other 150s that just do so much better than it. You can craft this, but unfortunately the GODROLL, the crafted GODROLL, the best version of this, is like firmly planted and demolitionist, I think, if even that's a GODROLL, if you can even call it that, right? Its base stats are not good, so we're definitely going to rank Pointed Inquiry all the way down there in C tier, the lowest ranking 150 RPM. Next up, we'll talk about the contingency plan. Now we're on to the 260 RPM, so this is that fast fire archetype. And this does roll with kill clip, which is really nice, so I'm going to rank it a little bit higher than the other 260s because of that reason. But even with kill clip, you're just getting a 4-tap with it, so you got to get a kill, and then you have that short window of time where you can get a 4-tap. Is a pretty fast, pretty lethal 4-tap, but it still is 4 bullets that have to be landed, so keep that in mind. Surplus kill clip is still a pretty cool roll in this, and so we're going to give that the B tier ranking for the 260 RPM contingency plan. Next up, we're going to talk about the Hung Jury SR4 Adept. This actually gets the S tier rating. This might be one of, if not the best scout rifle to use in PvP. Because of that box breathing, you can 3-tap with a 180. And you don't have to get a kill beforehand versus like getting a kill with a kill clip and then you have to get a kill, get your health back and reload. With box breathing, you can just ADS, get that box breathing to proc, and then you do have to hit a headshot, so keep that in mind. But when doing so, you get a 3-tap. That's S tier. That's absolutely nuts for PvP. I'm surprised we didn't see more people using that or utilizing that in PvP, especially on the bigger maps. But I think a lot of people know that this thing is good. But if you didn't know, if you haven't used it, or if you got one sitting in the vault, definitely bust that bad boy out because that is nasty, nasty. Next up, we'll talk about the Vision of Confluence. This is one that you get from the Vault of Glass, of course. And although you don't really see it used too much, it is one of the better archetypes because it's got kill clip on it, which is going to increase its time to kill. It's 180 that'll have that super lethal 3-tap time to kill. You can get surplus kill clip. Definitely a solid scout rifle overall. Definitely strong in current PvP sandbox. Next, we'll talk about the Percy's D. Not one that you see a whole lot of because it's dwarfed by other 150 RPMs, but it definitely is worth mentioning because it can get explosive payload, it can get perpetual motion. It's going to 3-tap. It's going to have the excellent handling and reload speed from perpetual motion. And overall, I just hear a lot of people saying that this thing is solid, a solid overall scout. Scouts in general just have a lot of forgiveness. If you ever shoot a scout rifle at someone in a private match, you'll notice you can miss by a lot, and it'll still give you the headshot or the body shot. The bullets still connect. Scout rifles are probably one of the most forgiving weapons in the game. Maybe bows trumping them just a little bit, but scout rifles are almost the most forgiving weapons in the game. Percy's D gets the A tier ranking for the 150 RPM. Next up, we're going to talk about the Servant Leader. Now, we're going all the way down to the Fast Fire again. This is the scout you get from Gambit. And it does have rapid hit kill clip, which is really sick. It's a nice roll for it. But unfortunately, we're in that 5-tap range, and then you get the 5-tap, and then you can reload, and then you get the 4-tap. So unfortunately, not the best overall, and I just don't feel like it hangs in there with the other scout rifles. Those 260s, they just don't quite have the range like the 150s and get to do that, basically play off of radar, play so far away. So I'm going to rank it all the way down there in the B tier, but it is definitely one of the better 260s if you're trying to rock one of those. Next up, we will talk about the tiers of contrition. Now, I see a lot of YouTubers and other people talking about this thing being extremely good. I think that the sights on it are awesome, but overall, I'm going to give it the A tier ranking, but I think it might be lower than that even potentially. I'm going to put it in A and let it sit in A, but we've got explosive payload, perpetual motion, so you're not going to get an increase on the time to kill of it, so you're basically running around 4-tapping with it, and I think that it's not as good as the other scout rifles. Of course not Hung Jury. Hung Jury can 3-tap with a box breathing, so we're definitely not putting this anywhere near S tier, but we'll give it the A tier rating for now. Let me know your thoughts down below if you agree or disagree. Next up, we're going to talk about probably the worst scout rifle on this entire list, potentially, the Trustee. I know that might frustrate some of you out there. You might love the Trustee, but Trustee is just all around bad. It's a 260, it 5-taps, and its best damage boosting perk is High Impact Reserves. That's no good. Surplus and High Impact Reserves are not it. That is not a PvP scout rifle. Definitely do not bust out the Trustee in PvP, in my opinion. I know some of you out there would be like, no way, that's my baby. I love Trustee, but there's definitely a lot better options than the Trustee in PvP. Trust me on that one. Then we'll be talking about the Guiding Sight. This is that Iron Banner scout rifle. And although it is the 150 archetype, it definitely gets the C tier rating. The reason why is because its second perk column is bad. Its overall stats are super low. You're rocking probably rapid hit and I guess iron grip, so you have like higher stability, but even that's rough. That's definitely not a good 150, especially when you're comparing it to the big titans like Jade Rabbit and others that we'll go over in just a minute here. Next scout rifle we're going to talk about is Talons of the Eagle. Okay, you got a 150 RPM, the long range one, and we've got firmly planted and explosive payload. That's a solid overall scout rifle. I mean, there's no reason to not use this. I know a lot of people will gravitate more towards Jade Rabbit just because it's there and maybe you haven't used a bunch of scout rifles, but this thing is very solid if you have one, of course. Not everyone will, but this thing is definitely solid and definitely comparable to the Percy's D. Then we've got the Scholar Adept. Not a lot of people will have this, but the Scholar Adept is nasty, okay? It's got crazy base stats. It's going to have just everything you want on a 150 RPM scout rifle, and it's got the perk Celerity and Opening Shot. I mean, if anyone has a Scholar Adept sitting out there with Opening Shot and Celerity, you should count your blessings because that thing is extremely rare. Probably 0.001% of the population would have a roll like that. And if it ever comes back around rotation, a giant trials map, you should bust that bad boy out instead of the J-Rabbit. That is definitely a better option in my opinion. But I'm definitely jealous of those that have that roll sitting in the vault, collecting dust. Next up, we'll talk about, as we're on the topic of trials and scout rifles, we'll talk about the Aisha's Embrace Adept. Okay, we're on the 260 archetype, which is the worst archetype in my opinion. And then you got multi-kill clip, so it's one of the lower damage boosting perks. And then you got perpetual motion. I just can't put it as high a ranking as the other ones, the other 260s that actually have kill clip, which is a better perk. So unfortunately, I'm putting it all the way down in the C tier ranking. I know some people will hate that. They'll be like, what? Aisha's not that bad. 5 tap, again, 5 tap, you get a kill. You can then 4 tap, but not as good as kill clips on the other 260s that we have already in the B tier ranking. So I can't quite rank it that high, given that all the way down to the C tier ranking. And then next up, we'll talk about the Royal Chase. We got a 180 RPM with multi-kill clip. Tested it out. Does increase the time to kill value. Okay, you get that 3 tap on a 180, which is pretty solid. You can rock no distractions, multi-kill clip. Which is not too bad of a roll, but definitely nothing to squawk over. So I'm putting it in the in-between B and A ranking. Definitely a solid scout rifle overall, but not nearly as good as some of the other 180s out there. Then we're going to talk about the Vouchsafe. We're on to the 200 RPMs. Okay. Vouchsafe gets the B tier ranking. We got the 200 RPMs. And the reason why is because if you get multi-kill clip on this, because it's the 200 RPM, it actually doesn't increase the time to kill value of it, or the fast of how fast you can kill it. It doesn't 3 tap. And so because it doesn't 3 tap and the only damage boosting perk is multi-kill clip, you pretty much have to run explosive payload. So now you're going to rock rapid hit, explosive payload on this weapon if you do get that roll, of course. And you're going to flinch people like crazy, but you're going to have to very consistently 4-tap people. I'm going to say that's significantly worse than the other scout rifles, and I'm giving that the B tier ranking. But I will say, if you want to flinch people like crazy, that's not a half bad strat. 200 RPM of explosive payload shots is pretty good. And then we'll talk about the Night Watch, which gets the exact same ranking because it's almost the exact same weapon. The one we just previously talked about was the Vouchsafe, and that's in the energy slot. It's Void, Dreaming City weapon, and this is the Night Watch, which is in the kinetic slot. It has the exact same roll and the exact same archetype. It's 200 archetype, rapid hit, explosive payload, the best roll on it. Again, a big flinch machine. Everything like we just said about the last one applies to this. So we're giving it the B ranking because it can't increase its time to kill value. And we're going to talk about the Eternal Blazon. All right. This thing is a beast. The Eternal Blazon is almost S tier. I couldn't quite do it, okay? It's the 200 archetype. You get a kill with this bad boy with kill clip. You get the time to kill increase. It's got the perk rapid hit to go along with it. It's a really good scout rifle overall. If you haven't rocked the Eternal Blazon with rapid hit kill clip or just any kill clip on it at all, definitely give that a try in PvP. That thing is going to be very crispy if you're able to get those kill clip 3 taps, of course. So can't quite put it in S tier, but I just wanted to give a little nod and say that it's a little bit above A tier. Honestly, I've liked this thing for a long time. I've had a roll sit in the vault, and that's where I'm going to rank that one. Next up, we're going to talk about the Pallades Corrector. This thing just has such a bad perk pool selection. It's terrible. I mean, the best perks you can even muster up on this would be Surplus and Elemental Capacitor, probably. You could put multi-kill clip on it, but again, we're on the 200 archetype, and multi-kill clip, one stack of that is not going to increase your time to kill value, so you really don't want to do that. You're going to get a kill, you're going to 4-tap someone, reload, have multi-kill clip procced, and then still have to 4-tap the next person. So not going to be very helpful. Pallades Corrector definitely gets the C tier ranking. Unfortunate. Next up in the legendary section, we've got the Transfiguration. This is one that everyone just loves to talk about because they have that special roll that very few people have, apparently. Rampage and kill clip. I have this roll, and I've tested it out. It is definitely really cool. You can get 1 kill, and you'll have a stack of Rampage, and you'll have kill clip procced at the same time, and they do stack together, and you'll do a 99 a shot to the head. 199 shot to the head, and then you can obviously fire 2, and you can 2-tap people, right? Unless, of course, they're 100 resilience. A lot of Titans will be rocking 100 resilience, so keep that in mind. That's why I put it in the A tier ranking. It feels a little more like a novelty with the way it handles and everything else. It doesn't feel as good as the other 150s, in my opinion. It is pretty cool that it can 2-tap, though. If you're running around in 6s and you are able to get a kill and proc this and get some 2-taps, you're going to have a lot of fun with this weapon. It's obviously rare to get that roll nowadays, especially. Back in the day, it used to drop all the time, but nowadays it's pretty rare. And it's definitely cool. It's a novelty. I think it goes in the A tier ranking. I know some people would disagree. They'll be like, no way, a 150 that can 2-tap? That's insane. But I don't think you're going to get very consistent 2-taps with it. So keep that in mind. But A tier ranking for that one. And then let's move on to the next one. This is going to be the last legendary that we rank. This is going to be the Staccato 46. Okay, we've got the 180 archetype. And we're giving this the B tier ranking because its best damage boosting perk is Rampage. And then its other perk column really doesn't have anything that's that impressive. You've got Outlaw, like it's just not very good, especially when you're comparing it to the other 180s, especially when you like Hung Jury is up there, and all the others that we've already talked about. So we're giving that the B tier ranking for the 180s, and we're going to move on to the exotics now. First up is the 200 archetype, the Mida multi-tool. A beast. It feels like sacrilege to not rank this S tier, right? Because it's so good and so known in the Destiny 2 PvP community. But you don't see it a whole lot, and for a good reason, because it's the 200 archetype. It doesn't get that damage boosting perk to increase that time to kill, and it does have aim assist out the wazoo and excellent movement and everything else that goes along with it. But um, I'm giving it the A tier ranking for this, and let me know if you agree or disagree. It's totally okay, but that's where I think it belongs in the current PvP sandbox. Next up, we're going to talk about the Polaris Lance. It was very hard to rank the Polaris Lance, um, not S tier, because if I used it for an entire weekend of trials and I was like, this thing's so good. The sights on it are a bit rough, maybe, but besides that, this thing is just so good. If you haven't been using this thing, use the Polaris Lance. Give it a try. It may not be the best scout rifle of all the scout rifles, but it is definitely a beast. So good. So good. Polaris Lance is nasty. Next up, we'll talk about the Dead Man's Tail. Now, again, this weapon is getting an adjustment next season, so I'm going to put it in between the A and S tier ranking because I imagine after the adjustments it will be better. It seemed like they were trying to buff it and make it better, especially for the hip fire. So I think that it'll be better, and I think it'll be a really good weapon next season. DMT meta potentially. Who knows, right? Who knows? Right now, you don't see it a ton. People use it every now and again when it's a bigger map, but it's definitely not as dominant as it used to be back in the day. It used to be literally like all that everyone used. It's been nerfed a few times and now buffed here and there, and now about to be buffed again. So I'm gonna put it in between the A and S tier rating because of its uniqueness and the way it's used, and of course, it's obviously really good. You can have Vorpal on it, melt some people out of their supers and stuff, which can always be nice. So it has a different dynamic to that, especially if you get the right roll on it. So that's where I'm gonna rank that. Then we're gonna talk about the Jade Rabbit. Of course, we're giving the Jade Rabbit the S tier ranking. The reason why is this is just the most used weapon on Eternity. It just has just crazy aim assist. The bullet magnetism is insane. It's just a real workhorse, just a real slugger. It does its job of being a long range scout rifle. The range drop off is seemingly non-existent on this thing, and yeah, it's definitely an S tier scout rifle on the big maps, of course. And next up, we're going to talk about the exotic scout rifle, the Symmetry. This is one you don't see a whole lot of, and the reason why is because it's a 260 archetype. And those 260s are 5 taps, like we talked about before. I would put it all the way down there in the C tier ranking, but because it does have some cool exotic, it has really high aim assist and a cool exotic perk with it. That if you can consistently get those headshots, you can light people up with it. I'll put it in the B tier ranking, but definitely nothing too crazy in PvP. You don't see this very often. And the last one I'm going to talk about is Skyburner's Oath, which is an absolute beast. Skyburner's Oath is S tier, and a lot of people are sleeping on it. I don't know why you're sleeping on Skyburners. The stats for Skyburners are absolutely nuts. It's been buffed like out the wazoo this season. Bungie made this thing crazy. I don't know why more people weren't using it when it was Eternity, but y'all need to wake up and realize that it's a Skyburner meta. Skyburner better than Jade Rabbit? Potentially. We'll see. I want to see when a big map comes around again. I want to see more people using the Skyburner because this thing is so nuts, so good. And there's the stats and using this weapon in PvP. If you're using the Jade Rabbit and using this, you're gonna be like, "What? Why did I use the Jade Rabbit?" I think the Skyburners is better than Jade Rabbit, so I'm putting it up there in the S tier. I know some of you will disagree, but I strongly believe that. So that's my entire Scout Rifle ranking tier list. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these points. I'll be reading all of your comments down below, and of course, I'll be updating this with time, and I'll make a PvE one after a few weeks into the new season. So that's a wrap on this one. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Later.